We welcome back the darkness once more, as we look even further into the dark suit trope for a third and probably final time. And if you need a quick run through reminder, or if you skipped to part 3 for whatever reason, the dark suit trope is used to represent a time in which the character of a story is enduring moral hardships or is entering a more intense and dark side of their lives. Sometimes it's visualized as a change of clothes, or, as I've bent the rules before, it can be a form change as well. And so we'll be looking over another 3 characters. I was going to make it 5, but I couldn't find the other 2, who have gone through said trope. This time though, I'll try to stay away from any of the dark doppelgangers like Scott and Dark Link again. Maybe another day in another video that isn't dark suits. We'll start off with someone who's been in more recent media, that being The Void, or technically Sentry from Thunderbolts. This one was suggested by Bun444, Shrimpy, and Government Man, and probably some others that I had missed in the comments. Now again, to point out, we'll be looking at the MCU version of the character, as my knowledge of the character from the comic books is really, really minimal. Like, I barely know him. All I know of him in the comic books is like a Superman ripoff that has like PTSD. So just some spoiler warnings for Thunderbolts the movie if you haven't seen it yet. The Sentry, or more accurately by his normal citizen name, Robert Reynolds, which is simplified down to Bob, which I'll be using, was once a substance addict. I'm trying to bend around the proper terminology for it because I assume YouTube wouldn't like it. And one day he was promised by OXE, Ox, a company run by one Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, that his addiction and more could be cured, thanks to the help of their science and the such. Of course, it wasn't entirely a lie, but I assume he was thinking something more along the lines of a medical injection once a month that clears up addictive habits or something, and not being put into what was called Project Sentry, which was Ox's attempt at creating the ultimate superhero, someone who was stronger than all the Avengers combined. Obviously, it was for a profit, but it would also benefit the Earth by being its main protector. Now, most willing test subjects for this project hadn't survived whatever procedure was done to them, but Bob, he somehow survived. Whilst he did indeed have all the power they aimed for him to have, he wasn't exactly the ideal candidate, as the power was intended for someone of a more stable mentality. You see, as a boy raised in an emotionally unstable household and later substance taker, it wouldn't be surprising if Mr. Bob here had some issues in the old think tank. Some issues, I assume, were depression and potentially bordering on DID, dissociative identity disorder. Now, of course, if you were to apply the Shatari technology that they supposedly used for the project, I imagine that this tortured human mind wouldn't really take that too well. Not only that, but after they transformed him into this Sentry, they didn't want him to remember any of it, so they wiped his memory, which did not help at all. After all this, it wouldn't be surprising if his trauma and the such had made The Void an alternate personality who is like literally the definition of depression personified within his mind. Of course, the plot of Thunderbolts takes place, but we'll shimmy ahead to the point where Bob's been abducted by Ox after rediscovering his powers, because as far as they were aware, he was... But Valentina saw that he could be something that they could use as the Sentry still. She became the Palpatine to Bob's Anakin, essentially. But that's in like Star Wars terms, so if you don't watch Star Wars, this might have gone completely over your head. Anyway, the only difference is that she's a normal-ass human and he's a borderline god. Or actually more than a god, because Thor is classified as a god in the MCU, and Bob's meant to be stronger than him, plus the Avengers, so he's probably... God, beyond a god, yeah. Obviously, it doesn't go right, as Bob slowly becomes addicted to his power, but wasn't aware of the failsafe, which makes his mind, you know, pop like popcorn. After this is when we truly get to see his dark suit. Oh, well, form, the Void. The only way you can stop the Void is a celestial level power, which could just erase him from existence, or if you can access Bob's mind, you could probably help him take back control of his body. Unlike other dark suits and forms, which are usually onset by the character's emotions and mentality, but almost always their own consciousness, I would say the Void and Bob are completely separate minds that share the same body. I think the Void originated as just a darker, depressed personality for Bob that he created during his younger years to help him deal with all of his issues. But it was still, you know, Bob's consciousness. He was still in control of it. It was just something that he would do to kind of like hide in his own feelings. But after his powers were given to him and his mind was like wiped and ripped apart, I believe that the Void gained its own consciousness alongside Bob's. Like, no therapy would fix it. He's his own separate, like, consciousness inside of this dude's brain. They would need to remove it from him entirely for it to be, like, fixed. And I think they do that in the comic books as well. And so his dark suit slash form isn't actually him. It's actually a whole other being that just happens to hijack his body, which then turns him into that dark form. So it's kind of like Venom, except if Venom originated from inside the body rather than latching onto it. As for design, the MCU Void is very simplistic. Probably to save on CGI, as a pure black silhouette with white dots for eyes is probably less effort than a Marvel level detailed suit flying around, but it still looks fine as it is. It's terrifying to look at. If you were to just see that floating up in the sky, you're like, oh, that's horrifying. But to compare it to its comic book counterpart, he's an eldritch being. That's worse than the MCU version. I wouldn't want to see that when I wake up. Pretty sure his comic book counterpart is capable of shapeshifting too, so this isn't the only form he takes. Now, to move on to another dark suit form caused by mental instability, we have Steven Universe's pink form. Steven Universe, from the show Steven Universe, is a half-human, half-gem who fought alongside the crystal gems. And if you don't know what gems are, other than like the actual physical real-life version of them, I'll give you a brief description. Coming from an alien world, gems are sentient gemstones who tend to have a power in relation to their gem type, and have bodies built of solid light. And Steven is a result of a human/gem pairing. To note, gems aren't really built for giving birth, because you know their body is like made of light. They don't have organs. So what Steven's mother did was use his father's DNA and her gemstone, which is embedded in her stomach, to form the little hybrid child that they would call Steven. And due to the unique body he has, his powers and the such act differently. And to note, because of this, she doesn't exist anymore because she had to use her gem to make him. But we want to talk specifically about Steven's pink form. Now, this is a spoiler for the show, so if you haven't watched all of it yet, I'm warning you now. Steven's mother, who went by the name of Rose Quartz when he was born, is actually a pink diamond. The diamonds are like the leaders of this whole alien thing. She faked her demise to lead a rebellion against the other diamonds in a form of Rose Quartz. And Steven learns of this near the end of the original series. We skip ahead to Steven Universe Future, which is after the main series and a movie, which is pretty on the nose, but it's literally a season of the series that takes place in the future, where Steven, with the help of the diamonds, who newly sided with him and the crystal gems, are fixing the issues that were made during his mother's war against the diamonds. It's the first episode of the series where we see Steven's pink form, named Little Homeschool. We get a run through of essentially what we've missed between the movie before the series to now. It's only when Steven goes to talk to Jasper, a very hard-headed brute, who sees weakness in fusions, which is a thing gems can do, when we get into Steven's actual issues. You see, at this point all the side characters had a steady life plan of sorts, but ever since the diamonds joined their side, Steven's life as a crystal gem became less important, making him realize he didn't really have anything outside of being a crystal gem, and he would start looking back at how he was a crystal gem and realize that he went through a lot of stuff when he was younger. And so when Jasper pins him to the floor with one foot and tells him he's essentially weak and nothing without his friends, this obviously makes Steven Universe a little bit mad, which causes his skin to turn pink and give off a glow. This gave him enough power to blast Jasper off of him, pretty much with ease, and using this power he would more or less throw Jasper around, brutally, before calming down. We'd have more of these moments as the series goes on. For instance, in the episode Guidance, he's fused with another gem, Amethyst, and gains a speed boost after panicking, thinking that he wasn't going to be able to save someone. In Volleyball, Steven bursts out after hearing more bad deeds of his mother, and this happens so on and on throughout more of the episodes, usually in relation to Steven's emotional state. And it doesn't help that at some point he proposes to his love interest, Connie, asking to be fused together forever, which is normal in gem culture, but obviously for humans it's really weird. Obviously she wasn't really enticed by the idea, saying that she still wanted to be her own person, and the two of them being a bit too young for that yet. While it's not a breakup, it was still a blow for Steven. It's during the episode Growing Pains where we learn just how traumatized Steven is from his adventures with the crystal gems, and how apparently he's broken his bones plenty of times. What the viewer might have seen as cartoony bumps to the head or tumbles were actually him breaking his bones and his gem powers just immediately healing them, which is a little messed up to think about, considering this was a kid going through all of this. There's also an episode called Mr. Universe that goes over Steven's family a bit more, but we'll skip that to get to a more important episode, which is right after that one, called Fragments. The Crystal Gems, who are essentially Steven's family, try to talk to him about his issues, but Steven's just not really up for that, bottling his emotions and running from the discussion. He hides with Jasper, as no one would think to look there, and Jasper essentially tells him that he should harness his anger to use as power rather than holding it back. Over time, after finding it good to release his rage in the form of physical fighting, he would be trained by Jasper. His shields became more diamond-shaped barriers rather than the little circular rose-shaped one that everyone's usually used to. His height began to grow, and his facial hair started sprouting, and his hair became more of a pompadour in shape. So no, this was over just a few days. It's just because of his weird gem, genetics that he's able to just have a growth spurt all of a sudden. At a certain point, Steven would ask to have a rematch with Jasper. Originally, he held back as he still had some control over his morality and stuff, but after she egged him on further, Steven went all out, shattering Jasper's gem, which, for gems, being shattered is essentially death. He quickly brings the shattered gem back to his house, where in the bathtub he uses potions that the diamonds gave him, along with his own tears, to resurrect them, because they can do that with gems and such. Jasper bows down to him as she now recognizes him as a diamond, which terrifies him, because her recognizing him as a diamond is... They're like warmongers before they join the Crystal Gems. So for someone who loves the diamonds when they were warmongers to be bowing down to him and calling him a diamond, that's horrible. Steven would then try to go to said diamonds, more specifically White Diamond, who is essentially the leader of the diamonds, to figure out how to deal with his powers behaving the way they are. But instead he nearly shatters her due to her actions to him in the past, in which she nearly unintentionally offed him without understanding how he worked. Steven would then return home, feeling immense guilt, and try to act as if all was normal and alright. But notably, he looks like a grown adult now. He then goes on to try and help everyone, and he's constantly in his pink form with the diamond-shaped eyes and all. Eventually, everyone became clearly aware of Steven's behavior, and they tried to talk to him about it, as he was talking to himself and so on. But instead, he turned into a giant pink Godzilla, because that's the healthier option than talking about your issues. First, they tried to fight him physically, which obviously didn't work or help. I mean, we already learnt our lesson from the Thunderbolts movie about that. And then they tried to fight him mentally, but that didn't work either. It wasn't until Connie showed up that they came to the conclusion that what Steven needed was reassurance and emotional help. The old group hugged him as they explained how he had helped them in the past, and so now it's their turn to help him. A lot of touchy-feely stuff. Steven would recover after this, and this dark form wouldn't really show again at all. Now, the label I would put Steven's dark form under is a little iffy, as it does seem to be created by his emotional state. But due to the history of the gem that's embedded into his stomach that he can't remove without dying, and how Pink Diamond used to act, which is the original owner of the gem, one could say that Steven might have been influenced by the gem, and that he might have been more open to discussion about his issues if he didn't have the gem at all. But that's more of a theory on my part. His emotional issues do seem reasonable for what's happened to him. Even if he didn't have a gem, he might still bottle them all up. It's just that it probably wouldn't have the same destructive quality as it did. And on another note, a more subtle change. Steven in the original series had a red shirt with a yellow star. Then in the movie, it was a light blue shirt, still with a yellow star. And then in the future series, he wears a black shirt, again, with a yellow star, as that's kind of like his symbol, which could be a symbolism for this being a rough part in his life. But in all honesty, the canon reason for it is that his shirts are actually just his dad's old shirts that he failed to sell during his younger years when he was a musician. One could say that the red ones are just child-sized, the light blue is for younger teens and normal teens, and the black shirts are for young adults to adults. But, my idea is nice is that they changed it for the character design of him being darker. As for the style, I do like how Pink Steven resembles Pink Diamond more, with the fluffier hair and the diamond-shaped eyes, and of course, the whole aura that he was giving off with a color tone change. I'm not a fan of Godzilla Steven, though. I don't know what they should have done in replacement of it, but I feel like it was just a weird way to go. Next up, we should jump up, kick back, whip around, and spin, because we'll be talking about the Ice Emperor from Ninjago. Firstly, a spoiler warning again, as I gotta reveal who the Ice Emperor is, although it's already pretty obvious, considering there isn't that many people with ice powers. It's Zane, the ninja droid, which is shortened down in the series as a Nindroid. And how exactly did he get to this place of power and look like this? We have to start off with the Forbidden Spinjitzu Scrolls, which can be used when someone holds one of the two scrolls that contain the secrets to it. It also has the potential to make the user more aggressive and power-hungry, as all things of unlimited power tend to be. Said scrolls are attached to spear thingies to make it look cooler for Lego sales, I guess, because you can't just sell them with a little scroll. Whilst fighting a forbidden Spinjitzu wielder Asphira, who is the antagonist for the start of Season 11, Zane wields the other forbidden Spinjitzu spear to stop her, but she gets a last hit in that's aimed at Master Wu. But Zane takes the shot instead and gets sent to the Nether Realm alongside his forbidden Spinjitzu spear. I've said like forbidden Spinjitzu way more than I would like to. It's really annoying to try and say. Also, apparently his giant mech was sent with him. I'm assuming that happened before Zane got sent over. Zane, now stuck in this dimension, would use the spear to defend himself and create a cave for his mech and himself. He tried to repair it, but he would need to run a full diagnostic check on it, which for some reason would be risky, as unplugging him while he runs it would erase his memory. I don't entirely know why he would need to put himself in that position to run a diagnostic check. That should already be a part of, the mech. Anyway, a dude named Vex overheard Zane say this in a video log, which Zane was leaving in case anyone had found him, and unplugged him, erasing his memory. This freshly impressionable Zane was manipulated by Vex, telling him that he was his advisor and that Zane was actually the Ice Emperor who had been overthrown, which worked somehow. The two would then take over the palace, turning the guards into his own, ice samurai. Now, you would imagine his friends would come to save him, right? You'd be partially correct, but due to space and time acting funny, Zane would live as the Ice Emperor for 60 years. He would live in this other dimension for 60 years. He was there for long enough to literally wipe out an entire Yeti species with a little amount of survivors that show up in an episode or two. With the combination of manipulation and the influence of the forbidden Spinjitzu spear for 60 odd years, Zane might as well have been long gone. He didn't even initially recognize Lloyd, who had been captured and brought to him by his guards. It was only afterwards when Lloyd mentioned all of his other friends that Zane's memories booted back up, which feels a little weird because he's a robot. But for the sake of storytelling, I guess he just recovered memories that were lost 60 years ago. After this, though, he was freed. The Ice Emperor persona does pop up again for a small moment during Season 15 as a gag, but that's it. I would say that his dark suit, or form, wasn't of his volition. Zane wouldn't have nearly wiped out an entire species by himself of his own decision. I would say that if Vex was removed from Zane's presence, but it was at the 60-year mark and Zane was still the Ice Emperor, he would definitely still be a really tough villain, because Zane would then continue doing everything that the Ice Emperor would still do. I feel like I might be bending the rules a little bit on this one, as I don't know what trope actually applies to this, but it feels enough in line with a dark suit and form for me to get away with it. Also, his fit does go hard. How do these tropes all vary though? Well, the Void was the creation of depression, a parent of poor quality, making their son develop a darkness in them that they try to escape with substances to cloud their emotions, inevitably falling victim to a company's lies. Unknown elements afflicting his mind and creating a whole other personality that can control his body. Pink Steven is the result of buried trauma and the magical influence of stress of his mother's past actions, causing him to lash out emotionally and sometimes physically and become more powerful as he does so. And lastly, we have the Ice Emperor, the result of manipulation and influence from an ancient artifact, causing his actions to be dictated by anger he wouldn't usually feel. But then how are these dark suits all similar to each other? They all show some facet of manipulation and poor influence. Zane and Bob were both manipulated due to their memory loss by the very people who caused it, to use as their own personal weapons, essentially. Steven and Zane were both, at least potentially for Steven, influenced by a magic object that may make them more emotionally volatile. And Steven and Bob would both lash out due to their emotional instability. But in Bob's case, it was much less often, as the Steven Universe series was kind of all about emotion, so it obviously displayed happening more often. And with that, I would say that this is the end of my coverage of the dark suit trope. Kind of. I do plan on making a dark suit / form trilogy video, kind of like a movie, in which you see all three parts, all three videos in one big video with corrections and probably an extra 3 characters to round out the total to be 15 characters. So keep an eye out for that. Probably won't be in the next week, but maybe the week after that. So feel free to suggest some more characters who have had dark suits / forms that I haven't covered down in the comments. Heavy preference on less anime stuff, because that isn't exactly my area of expertise, in all honesty. Also, I already see you down there. I will get to Kamen Rider at some point, okay? I don't know where to watch it. Anyway, I guess it's plug time. I don't have a watch. I don't know why I did that. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, then feel free to subscribe as I post every weekend. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video as it helps push it into the algorithm for others to see. Also, I'm gonna make this real quick. We have a membership for $2 a month, and you get access to videos as soon as they're uploaded rather than waiting for the weekend, and a shout out in the outro. And you'll also be supporting the channel. And of course, not sponsored. Big thanks to my tourists, Tina Buttercup, Crystal Kensbit, Jasmine Wilson, Wilbur Flight, and Nugsy1. I'll see you all again next week.